back to the homestead. The last few episodes we've been working on that basement modern bar, and today we're going to continue along with that project. Specifically, we're going to be building some floating shelves. Okay, so let me start off by saying this is not the only way to build floating shelves. In fact, it's not the only way I've used to build floating shelves. This may not even be the best way to build floating shelves, but it's a way that I have built them in the past that I know works with reproducible results. Now, I've already done all of the cutting for this project. I'm not going to bore you with that because, well, at the end of the day, it's just basically breaking down plywood. But to give you kind of a rundown of exactly what I did is I cut all of my pieces of plywood to the exact size of shelf that I want to install. Additionally, on the radial alarm saw, which I'm using a whole lot more now that I redid the trailer on a total tangent, but on the radial alarm saw, I broke down a ripped down piece of 2x6, so it's just an 1.5 by 1.5 piece of wood now. And this is gonna form kind of like the bracket or the bracing on the wall that I attach my floating shelf to. So with that, let's assemble these shelves and get them on the wall. So I also cut some scrap bracing, and it's just gonna be used to space my pieces of plywood nice and evenly and give me just a little bit of extra rigidity out at the outer edge. It's not critical where exactly these sit, as long as they're not gonna be in the way of the bracing that is going to be on the wall. While these set up, we're going to turn our attention to the bar area itself and get our mounting brackets up on the wall. So I've already marked the heights of where my shelves are going to sit, and I'm just going to throw up a couple marks exactly where my studs are so I make sure I hit them when I'm mounting my brackets. Alright, well, if I built everything properly, this should just slide in and nest in nicely. Before we continue on, I want to make one quick note. If you're dealing with a corner like this, throw a square in there. Don't just assume it's 90 degrees. And I did that here and noticed that it was off by about 1/4 of an inch over that 10 or 12 inches from back to front. And I accounted for that when I cut my plywood. That way everything stays nice and tight to the wall and you don't have any kind of unsightly gaps. With all that being said, those could not fit any better, and we're going to move on to cutting our faces to hide that plywood edge and give that nice thick floating shelf look. So for this particular plywood, I like to work with fir tongue and groove to make those faces, to give it that nice thick chunky look. I find it takes a stain and seals almost identical to that plywood, giving it that nice one-piece look. In the beginning, I did have to play around with some different materials to find that nice match, but once I have, I stick with it every time because I think it gives that nice thick uniform look. So I want this outside miter to form a really tight bond. So I'm going to be using some CA glue on it that should stop it from opening up in the future as the wood shifts and dries out. And then we'll put it in place. guys up, we're gonna give them a really light weathered gray stain, just to tie them in a little bit more with the floor, and then we'll firmly fix them in place. To be completely honest, you can hardly even tell the difference, but it's just enough to take that shine out of the birch. And to fix these guys in place, we're going to use some really inconspicuous trim screws. Well folks, that about does it for the floating shelves here at the Basement Bar Project. In case you missed any of the earlier episodes of this series, I will queue them up right there for you. Thanks a ton for watching, and we'll see you guys in the next one.